I'm Rebecca Sloan,
And I'm John Snavely.
and it is March 2019. All right, well, John, we are going to take a look at some stories today, and our goal is to find out what your strengths are, and then see if there's any areas where we can help you improve with anything. Okay? All right, do you know what a narrative means? Does that word mean anything to you? Narrative?
Like a narrator is a person talking over like a movie.
Yeah, good connection. Okay, perfect. Yeah, and there's a narrator in books too, right? That tell the story. Yeah, good connection. So a narrative, one meaning of a narrative can be like a fictional story, just a made-up story. Okay. In this particular case, this narrative is not a made-up story. It's a biography. Do you know what a biography is?
It's about a person. Like, I think it's not by a person, but it's about a person.
Yes, it's about a person. So yeah, it's usually written by somebody else, but it's about a particular person.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, our narrative is about Abraham Lincoln. Now, what do you, let's find out what you already know about Abraham Lincoln. Do you know who he was?
Yeah.
Who was he?
Abraham Lincoln, he was a president who fought for slave rights. I know that he died in the theater. He was shot in the back of the head. I know that he was born in what state? Illinois.
Wow.
I know that he lived in a log cabin. He was born. It was one bedroom, like one room.
Wow. Sounds like you know a lot about him.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned slavery.
Mm-hmm.
What are the evils of slavery?
Not giving people their rights and forcing people to work.
So what do you mean when you say forcing?
Like making them work without pay.
Okay. And why was the Civil War fought?
Because the Southern were fighting because they thought that if the slaves were taken away, that their economics would just crash, and the Northern was mostly fighting for their right and also fighting to free the slaves.
Okay. And what were the results of the Civil War?
The Civil War, the Northern one, and the slaves were free.
You said the North won and the slaves were free. Is that what you said? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, it sounds like you know a fair amount already.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So let's have you read this. And again, you're not in any hurry. Just take your time. Although I am, let's see. If it's okay with you, I am going to also, in addition to recording this on the iPad, I'm also going to record just this part of it on my phone. Would that be okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah.
And just take your time. You're fine.
Okay. When Abraham Lincoln was 19 years old, he visited the city of New Orleans. He saw things that he would never forget. He saw black people being sold into slave markets. They were chained together and treated like animals. Lincoln watched the little children being sold to strangers and taken away from their parents. Lincoln was heartbroken, and these memories stayed with him for the rest of his life. Although slavery was allowed in many states of the Union, Lincoln believed that it was wrong, and he was not afraid to say so. In 1858, Lincoln ran for the United States Senate against Stephen Douglas. And there was much talk about slavery. Should the owning of slaves be allowed in new states, and that were just coming up into the Union? Douglas said that the discussion to own slaves was up to each individual person. Lincoln said that slavery must not be allowed to spread because it was wrong. But he knew that it would not be easy to end slavery in those states that he had allowed it for so many years. Lincoln believed that it was important to keep the United States strong. He felt that slavery weakened the country. In one speech, he said the country could not last half slave and half free. He said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." Lincoln lost the election to the Senate, but he became well known for his views. In 1860, he ran for president of the United States. The slave states opposed Lincoln as president. They did not want to abolish slavery. They threatened to leave the Union if Lincoln was elected. When he became president, the slave states carried out with their treaty. A terrible war broke out between the northern and the southern states. At times, members of the state family were fighting against one another. In 1863, Lincoln gave an order called the Emancipation Proclaim. I don't know how to say that. Emancipation Proclamation, which ended slavery. The war finally ended 2 years later. The southern states once more became part of the Union, but slavery was no longer allowed. No more would little children be torn from their parents and sold to strangers. Abraham Lincoln had achieved his goal.
Okay. So, I would like for you to just tell me whatever you remember, whatever made sense to you, whatever you can recall.
Oh, so I should put this
Yeah, you can. You can turn it over.
Okay.
Tell me everything you can remember.
So Abraham Lincoln, when he was 19, he went to New Orleans and saw little children being sold and separated from their parents. Then he went back to the northern states and ran for Senate against somebody Douglas, and he talked about how slavery shouldn't happen, and then but he lost to the Senate, but got lots of proclaim for all the people who watched him. Then he ran for president, 1863, and he got elected for president and signed the something proclaim. I don't remember what it was called. I remember if I could see it, but Emancipation Proclaim, and which ended all slavery. And 2 years later, the slaves were allowed to. They're free.
Okay. So, all right. So just so you know, the way to say that phrase is emancipation. Okay, say that part.
Emancipation.
Mm-hmm. Proclamation.
Proclamation.
Okay, so try to say it all together. Emancipation Proclamation.
Emancipation Proclamation.
That's a mouthful, isn't it? So, emancipation is a big word for freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And proclamation. Have you ever heard somebody say that they proclaim something? What does that mean if somebody proclaims something?
Like they prove it, sorta, or like state it.
Okay, they state it, they prove it. Yeah. So somebody who's proclaiming the thing that they're stating or proclaiming is called a proclamation.
Yeah.
And so he was. So play that out for me. Lincoln was.
He was saying that there was no more slavery anymore.
Yeah, he was saying, I proclaim through this law that there's no more slavery anymore. Yeah, they're free, right?
Mm-hmm.
Free. So yeah, Emancipation Proclamation was the official way to say the slaves are free.
Yeah.
All right. So can I ask you some questions about what you just read? Okay. What was Abraham Lincoln's main goal?
To slay the slave. To free the slaves.
Yeah. Name one thing that Abraham Lincoln saw in the slave markets of New Orleans.
He saw little children being sold to strangers and taken away from their parents.
Yeah. How did the sights of the slave market influence Abraham Lincoln's later life?
Can you repeat that?
How did the sights of the slave market influence Abraham Lincoln's later life?
They influenced him by showing him how horrible it was and showing that he needed to change something.
Now, when you say it,
Mm-hmm.
showing how
Like
horrible
slavery.
it was. Yeah, okay. What office did Abraham Lincoln run for against Douglas?
Senate.
Yeah, the Senate. What did the Southern states threaten to do if Abraham Lincoln was elected?
Get out of the Union. I'm not sure, to get out of the Union.
Yeah, quit out of the Union. The fancy word for that is secede. You ever heard that word?
No.
Secede. Can you say it?
Secede.
Yeah, secede. But it's what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
To quit or leave out of the Union. To secede. All right. Why did the Southern states oppose Abraham Lincoln as president?
Because they wanted to keep the slaves, because if not, it would have thrown their economics into it would have been crazy. And they wanted to keep the slaves because they wanted to keep them working.
Yeah. And that's not what Lincoln was. He
No.
was against
Yeah,
that
he was
whole thing,
against
right? Okay. How did Abraham Lincoln's prediction, "A house divided against itself cannot stand," come true?
Because when they split the southern states that went out of the Union, and the people that were still in went into a war, and the war caused lots of killing and what wars usually happen. So the two divided collapsed, I guess.
Yeah, because the two were divided, right?
Mhm.
So, what did the Emancipation Proclamation do?
It set the slaves free.
It did. Yeah. So ultimately, was the Union preserved, or was it split apart forever?
When after the proclamation, or what?
Yeah, after the after the Civil War, what happened?
They came back together and created the United States again.
Yeah.
Like one union.
Yeah, one union, right. Right. Okay. All right. I enjoyed hearing you read that. And that's an interesting topic, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And you knew a lot about it already before we ever started. But I know one reason I picked that because I had some other choices that I could have picked. But one reason I picked that is because earlier on last week you had told me that you kind of liked historical kind of stuff. Yeah. I can see that you do and that you are good at it.
Do you want this?
Okay. Yes. Thank you. All right. So this one is about building the pyramids.
Okay.
Okay. So this is what they call expository, which is a big word for factual.
Yeah.
All right. Now, let me ask you some questions before we start. Let's see if this is a good match for you. Because I don't want to give you something to read that you totally don't know anything about, right?
Uh-huh.
That makes it all that much harder.
Yeah.
It's better if we can bring some of our prior knowledge to the table, right? Into our reading. Okay, so let's see. Because again, if you don't have any prior knowledge, maybe we want to try something else. But let's see. So what are the pyramids?
The pyramids are, I don't know, like the stone buildings in triangles in Egypt and around northern Africa.
Okay. What is a pharaoh?
A pharaoh is kind of like the king in Egypt and North Asia, or not Asia, Africa.
Now, when you say Egypt, do you mean like modern day Egypt?
No, a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite a long time ago.
Yeah, almost like ancient
Mm-hmm.
times.
Ancient Egypt.
What is a mummy?
A mummy is a king or important person who died, and they wrapped their body with I don't know what to call it, like, I don't know, towels or something. And then that's what they put in the coffins for them to be buried.
Okay. And what is an archaeologist?
An archaeologist is a person who, like, they work with like fossils and bones and things of the past, and they go and dig and find them.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So it sounds like you know enough, don't you, to give this a fair shot. Okay. All right. So let's see. Yeah, it's just